Welcome to the Hardwood Hustle, powered by PGC Basketball. We believe in the value of a coach. We're here to educate, empower, and encourage you to lead like never before. This week, Sam and I discuss the role of assistant coaches. There's something for everyone as we talk about how you can make your staff better with ideas on improving communication, narrowing your focus, and anticipating the needs of the program. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Hardwood Hustle. Sam and Lisa with you today, and we're going to talk about the role of an assistant coach. We'll cover a lot of different things under this. I think a lot of things that head coaches and assistants can take away. So, Lisa, to start us off, what are some overarching thoughts to get us going on our conversation about the role of an assistant? You were an assistant coach at the Division I college level for a decade. You've recently jumped into the high school ranks as an assistant, and I'm sure we'll have a ton of good learnings as well. But what are some opening thoughts for us?
Well, Sam, some opening thoughts are that great teams have great assistant coaches, and how a head coach leads this group, manages this group, mentors this group, empowers this group is really key to their success, the team's success, and ultimately the head coach's success. Really, that's part of how the whole, like, you take all these roles of the player roles and administrators roles and coach roles, and it's like everybody who plays their part coming together. And I think as assistant coaches, they're extensions of the head coach, but they also have this unique role to play as a bridge between player and coach, even between head coach and admin. And they can, communicate, they can fill in the gaps, they can have more of a direct relationship to players. Maybe they're at a different age level than you. They can fill in the gaps for a head coach in just terms of their skill set. And, so you get somebody on your staff that's complimenting you. And so there's just so many great things an assistant coach can bring. I think this conversation will be hopefully a really fruitful one for coaches to listen to, because, there might be a couple of things that you're missing with your assistant coaches. If your assistant coach listening, it's something that you could fill in, but it's really about just maximizing your potential of your staff, or maximizing your role as an assistant.
Yeah, and I think this is an important one. I love this topic because it is. I've been on both sides of it, as like a head coach and an assistant coach, and there's different dynamics in a coaching staff that are critical to the success of a player and the team throughout the season. I'm going to say a statement, Lisa, and I want you to just tell me whether you agree with this statement or disagree. It's one that I've seen on Twitter a lot lately from coaches saying this: the job of an assistant coach is to make the head coach look really good. That's the statement. Do you agree with that?
No, because I think at the end of the day, you're always at the service, not of the head coach, but just of the team and the team's mission. And so your job is to help the team accomplish its mission. And sometimes your head coach doesn't need to look really good. Your head coach needs to change, or your head coach needs to be encouraged. Your head coach needs help in organizing. And so it might, at the end of the day, if you could say, okay, well, if they're representative of the face of the program and they look really good, then everybody else looks really good. But I think that's a shift in what's really the most important. What are we about? And I think it's about everybody sacrificing and coming together for the good of the group, primarily as people first. And so looking good, that's just not how I define things, because you're going to say, well, maybe it's winning a championship. That looks really good, but that doesn't do anything if people are unhappy and they're not doing it the right way.
I kind of agree with you. Interestingly, I like the notion of, I get where a coach goes with that. Like, here, that's, who says that a lot? Head coaches that were longtime assistants and now they're the head coach. And so they say, when I was an assistant coach, my sole job was to make the head coach look good. And what they're really saying is my expectation of all my assistants is for them to make me look good. And so I agree with you, Lisa, that is that really what we're doing here? Is it we need to make the head coach look good, or are we really about serving players? Because isn't that what a coach's job is to do, is to serve their players? And we can define serve a lot of ways, but I think a lot of coaches listening to these, or maybe this is a false statement, but I think a lot of coaches listening want to be a transformational coach who also wins a lot of games. And those two things can be true. And so the job of coach is head, assistant, manager, dobo, whatever your role is to push the program forward. And the way you push the program forward is to serve and develop your players individually and collectively. And so, yeah, I think you can also make your head coach look really good. And as an assistant, you know this, Lisa, some of your job is part of the job. Let's say part of the job is to make the head coach look good. You know why that's important? Because it gets players to buy into that coach's vision for the team. And the better the buy-in, then the faster and the further we can go as a unit and as a team. Now, I knowing you, I think I know a little bit cryptic of what you said a moment ago, which is, hey, behind closed doors, you can't be a yes man or yes woman. You're going to have to stand up and challenge the head coach at times. When you walk out, you need to be united so that we're all on the same page. But it's not about walking around, waking up every day as an assistant coach. How can I serve my head coach today? How can I? Yeah, that's part of it. But it's not about making them look good. It's just about pushing the program forward. And so can those two things be true? Yeah, they can. But I think it's more of a secondary outcome, I guess I would say it that way, whereas maybe the primary driver is, again, I've said it maybe 3 times now, is to serve the players and push the team forward.
Yeah, and I would just add on to serving the players, again, isn't about, because we're getting into this culture now with recruiting and you know, making sure your players are, I think having a good experience is important, but it's how that comes together. A good experience isn't them happy all the time. A good experience isn't them prioritizing fun and what they want to do at practice and how they want to play and all their opinions, because we are to lead them, especially when they're, you know, in, you know, youth or high school basketball, when they're still coming into their own and learning what's appropriate, what's right, and how to, you know, be their best selves. We need to lead them. And so when we serve our players, it's serving the mission or the goal that we have for them. You know, if we want to develop their discipline, their commitment, their accountability, their responsibility, their integrity, we are serving that. We are serving what is the best thing for the team and what is the best thing for the individuals, and making the right decisions for that as best we can along the way. Not necessarily, you know, you think about it in recruiting right now, serving the good of the best player by saying, well, I need to get so-and-so at my school and they're going to average 20, 30 points for us and they're going to help us win a lot of games. So I'm going to treat them differently. I'm going to cater to their needs. You know, they might have their own workout. They might not have to do all the things all the other players are doing. I'm serving that player, and that's not right, because then you're compromising the team and the culture that you're trying to create. And so I think when we say serve our players, it's serving the collective good.
Yeah, so let's just rattle off a few roles of an assistant coach. What roles, what hats do they wear? I'll throw a few at you, and then you can chime back in yourself. So I think an assistant coach, Lisa, wears so many hats, just like a head coach does. I think they're an encourager, they're a challenger, they are a psychologist, they're a teacher, they're a player development coach. And they're a leader, you know, and so you're an in-between, by the way. You're sometimes that in-between that the player doesn't feel as comfortable going to the head coach. And an assistant coach in that role, Lisa, I think is that, especially, I shouldn't even say especially at the college level, but I saw it a lot at the college level where, you know, players want to be able to confide in a coach. And sometimes a head coach at any level, they have a certain prestige or authority about them that a player doesn't feel as comfortable going to. And so an assistant plays a critical role in that and being the in-between. And actually, pause on that because I want to get your thoughts on this. When a player shares information with the assistant coach, you're a filter in a lot of ways. If you were to take everything that player said and then shared it in front of the head coach, it might not be the best idea. But then there's some things that you get that are shared with you that you need to share or you need to articulate in your own way to get across. Maybe the head coach the last 4 days at practice has been driving the bus really hard and pushing it, and players are feeling a little fatigued. They're mentally drained. They're emotionally drained. And you as an assistant maybe didn't feel it as much until a couple of the players were just talking to you, at lunch or in the office. And so you got to go to that head coach and tell them to back off. And you got to get them to tone it down a little bit. But you, the assistant, know how to say it in a way that a player, whether a 15, 16, or 21-year-old, didn't know how to say it, right? So tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are on that filtering process.
Yeah, it's been called a need to know. And what does the head coach really need to know about what you've been told or what you've seen or what's going on? And that comes with trust and time to be able to understand what the head coach wants to know. Because I think at the end of the day, as them being the leader, if you think they would want to know, you got to tell them if it's for the right reasons. So yeah, you have to be able to make that be the filter. And I know that, again, that took me time to figure out, but if it's something that you can handle and you're able to make the decision that this player is going to be in the right situation or the team's going to be the right situation, or really that's just nonsense and drama that we can, leave as it is, it's already been handled or taken care of, then that's the filtering, and that comes from all at different aspects of the program, on and off the court or in practice. Sometimes it's giving the benefit of the doubt to a player who maybe said something off the cuff or didn't mean it. And you as an assistant, you can go and have that conversation and mentor them and say, hey, this is how you need to approach that next time. And that doesn't always need to get back to the head coach, because they could, be worrying about 5 things like that when there's more important things on their plate. And at the end of the day, as a leader, sometimes it's hard to make that decision between, what's the most important thing here, because that could be, a seed planted or something that's wrong. And I want to, snuff out that little fire. But if that's why you empower your assistant coaches, because if they can take care of some of those fires for you, then you can stay focused. And I think that's one of the biggest things for head coaches is being able to have the staff under them that will take care of their business so that you can take care of your role and run in your lane really well.
And this is where, as a head coach, I love that point. You triggered a lot of thoughts for me too, because I think of a assistant coach as a fireman or a firewoman. You're putting out some fires that never need to get to the head coach. You're talking a player off the ledge, or you're encouraging. You're doing things behind the scenes that never even get to the head coach. And what is that? That takes loyalty and trust. Sometimes that, you might have a first-year assistant. You got to develop really fast trust with them. So as head coaches that are listening, I think you got to be really high. You got to have high emotional intelligence here and awareness to look at your staff and find out what some of the strengths are. And I'm not even saying weaknesses. I'm saying, what are some of your staff strengths? And then how do you put them in a lane and really encourage those assistants to thrive in those? You're on staffs where, you have a head coach, Lisa, and you got 3 assistants, and then you got a couple admin people. And you worked with people where you had your strengths as an assistant, and then the other assistants had their strengths. And it's really important, right, to get people, like John Collins says, or Jim Collins says, get people on the bus, but then you got to get them in the right seats on the bus. Sometimes we got people in the wrong seats, and then we're wondering why they're not thriving. Get your assistant coaches on the right seats on the bus and let them play to their strengths. And head coaches need to empower for that to happen and know that it's not going to happen how you want it. So guess what? You got to drop your ego a little bit. You got to be a little bit humble there and let your assistants really do their job, and then coach up your coaches in the process.
And part of this too, Sam, I was just thinking about, what we set out to talk about, and just maximizing and empowering your assistant coaches and getting them to thrive in their role. So there's going to be times where you either don't have enough staff to cover everything that needs to be done in the program, or you have people who have to run in a lane that they don't really want to run in. And that's okay. I think the biggest thing on a staff and biggest thing for a head coach or an assistant coach is just communication. So in order to get the right feedback, or in order to understand what is, helping a coach thrive, or maybe it's draining them a little bit, is you got to talk about it. You got to ask questions. You got to make that a constant part of your culture on your team is, hey, how are you doing? How did you think practice went? Hey, I know you're doing this role. How do you feel about it? Is it going well? Is it burdensome? And sometimes, it's burdensome. Okay, as a head coach, how can I help you get through that? Is there anything I can do? Sometimes there isn't anything, but just acknowledging what that assistant coach is going through, acknowledging that nobody else on the staff wants to do that job, really appreciate you taking that on. That, again, communicating that value and appreciation, being able to have harder conversations, ask the questions as an assistant coach, to say to your head coach, hey, this is challenging for me. I know I volunteered for it this year, but I don't want to do it again. Is there another way we can do this? Instead of, again, I think what breaks the staffs up is just not communicating, not talking about it, not asking the questions, not having the hard conversations. And so part of that, thriving in your role and getting you into the right seat has to come through the relationships, the trust that are built through those conversations. And so I just encourage coaches to make that a big part of your staff culture.
Like that's a show in itself. I think you're spot on, the communication, because so many staffs, there's unmet expectations, there's failed expectations, there's frustration that stacks on top, there's unsaid communications, things that I want to say, but I don't say. And then if you're an assistant, you feel even more reluctant to share. And I think it's worth just for a moment going a little bit deeper here to give some coaches some of the tools. So what I have found, Lisa, in those courageous conversations, and it's a skill. It is one that you really have to develop and work at. And so, example, here's a way to work at it, coaches who are listening. You have a frustration. You're an assistant coach. You're frustrated with the head coach. Maybe you feel like they come underneath you and cut your leadership. Maybe they don't. You feel like they don't give you enough leadership opportunity. I could keep going. There's a lot of things that could cause frustration. So how do you approach the conversation? Well, sometimes it's just having a moment of vulnerability with the head coach. So if you're my head coach, Lisa, and said, Coach O'Mara, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something that's been on my heart a lot, and I really don't know how to say this, and I'm a little bit nervous saying this, and I may say it the wrong way. So just right there, say, I may say this the wrong way, so forgive me for a moment. That right there, I think, lets the curtain down and just says, I don't have the right words, but I just want to try to say them, right? And so it's like, hey, I know you've given me some leadership with the scouting report, and I'm so appreciative. And then when I'm giving it to the team, at times I feel like I don't really get to give it, and you're interrupting me. And I know that this is your program, and so maybe I'm in the wrong, but sometimes it just feels like I don't ever get to really fulfill that role that you've given me, and maybe I need to do something better so that you trust me more. I don't know, but that's how I feel. And listen, people can disagree with like a lot of things. They can't disagree with your own feelings. And you know what I mean? Like, you can't tell me what I feel, and I can't tell you what you feel. And it's not like this lovey-dovey, I'm sharing all my feelings. I know we joke about that, but like, yeah, just tell them how you feel about it. And then boom, stop talking for a minute. Let them, that's the courageous conversation. And by the way, courage can't exist without fear. So you're going to be a little fearful. And so step into that little courage a little bit, and 20 seconds of insane courage will go a long way, and you have some major breakthroughs. And I say that from experience. I've had major breakthroughs in coaching relationships and work relationships through courageous conversation. And I didn't know how to do that 15 years ago. I didn't know how to do that as a player, really. And it's something I've had to work at. So yeah, I think you hit on something really important there. So I just wanted to share that.
Definitely. And one piece of advice that I got once was, when you have that conversation, especially if you're older and you're setting your ways, you're working with, once we get into our 30s, we're starting to really, figure out who we are and how we like to be. And those habits and our personality traits are getting pretty set. And so when you have this conversation, especially with an older coach, to say, hey, I don't think you do this, or I want you to do this better. And I don't feel like you mentor me and you don't trust me. It's going to be really hard anybody who hears that might get defensive automatically, right? Because their intentions are good and they're not acting out of them. And so a good thing for you to do, whether you're the head coach or the assistant coach, when you're having this conversation, is just name the behaviors to say, when you did this, it made me feel a certain way, or it didn't help, or, when you did this, it really did help. It made my job a lot easier. So like name the things that they're doing or not doing, because I think it's easier for them to change behavior and actions rather than to say, I need you to mentor me. I need you to trust me. Well, what does that look like? What are you actually wanting from me?
No, Lisa, I think this is great conversation, and I hope coaches are taking some stuff away from it. I know I am personally, if nobody else is. We have our coaching blueprint at PGC Coaching, and I think this is worth touching on. We broke coaching into 5 categories: system and strategy, player development, master teaching, culture, and leadership. And I bring that up because I think this is an important thing for assistant coaches to be thinking about, and head coaches, which is, what do I need to be a star in? We talk about that with players. We've done episodes like, how does a player be a star in their role right now for this season, but also build towards a bigger role for later in the season or future seasons? Well, I think coaches need to approach it the same way. So does a young 23-year-old assistant entering their first year of coaching need to be, competent and majorly equipped with their system and strategy? No, probably not. But do they need to have a basic understanding of what the head coach in their program? Yeah, they do. They need to know, what are we trying to do offensively? What are the main actions we're doing? What are we doing defensively, so that they can teach it? But they don't need to have their whole system that they want to run when they're a head coach fully developed. Now, what they may need to spend a lot of time on, Lisa, is their player development. Maybe they need to become a great shooting coach, or a great reads coach. How to read it when they catch do I shoot it? Do I drive? Do I pass? So that they can run great player development workouts. Or maybe they're going to be running the weight program, and they need to be competent and equipped in muscle, strength and endurance, and how to work muscles in the weight room, because they're going to take a lead role in that. So it's important first to just know, okay, what I need to be great at now, but I'm studying the other stuff. Maybe, late at night before I go to bed, I'm watching videos, and I'm a member of PGC Coaching, so I'm getting better at this. They need to get good at certain things that they'll need 5 years from now, but they need to get better at the things that they need to be good at right now. And I think that's something that's missed sometimes. What are your thoughts?
I would say for coaches to pick one thing at a time to develop in. So, and it could be one thing a week, and it could be one thing a month. It could be one thing a season. Maybe there's actually, one thing for each of those. So if you pick a broad topic, this year as an assistant coach, I'm going to get better at player development. And then each month you have a different focus. And each week you say, okay, I want this, I'm going to improve my communication. And maybe you come back to communication regularly. But again, just being really intentional about it's kind of like calling your shot, which we've talked about. I think as assistant coach, you can call your shot from year to year, from month to month in your development, even different parts of the season, because trying to get better at everything, like you were referencing, an assistant coach who's like trying to get ready for the next job, or maybe it's next year, maybe it's down the line, and they're trying to become better at player development, and they need to work on their communication, and they need to be more organized in the office. They need to be more prepared in their scouting reports. They need to dive into the analytics. Like, we all need to be good at those things. But when our focus is in so many different directions, we get okay at everything. We master none of them. And I think the answer is we can create range in our skill set, but in order to really focus and get better at one, we need to pick it and name it, call our shot. And I think that will help assistant coaches and even head coaches, mentor them. If you give them feedback in 20 different things, it's like trying to coach a player in a drill. You're just overloading. It's too much. And so to give that one thing to your assistant, or for an assistant coach to pick that one, again, for a head coach to pick one, what are they going to get better at? That can really help in this development piece to narrow your focus.
Yeah, and when you think about, I'm going to circle back to what we kind of started with off your last point. When you do narrow your focus, you get really great at that one thing. And when you become a master of something, you become very valuable. And when you're valuable, you become more important and you can grow in your other roles. I think about like just watching the Heat and the Celtics, and you think about an Eric Spoelstra. He started off as a videographer, or Mike Budenholzer. Some of these head coaches, I'm using NBA head coaches as examples, or you could look across the board at college coaches who started out as managers who cut up a lot of film. And by studying film, you get so much smarter and your basketball IQ rises and you see things in the game in a different way. But that wouldn't have happened if they were trying to do, to your point, be a jack of all trades. No, their sole role was to be the videographer and to be really good at that and get the film to the players and the coaches. And that singular focus allowed them to master it, and then they can branch off and become something else. And so we started out, or one of the first things I asked you was, hey, is a job to make the head coach look good? And so we said, that's not their sole focus, but it doesn't hurt if they can do that. So I want to touch on a few things here. Take care of all the little things as an assistant coach. The little things, nothing should be beneath you. Nothing should be, that's sweeping the floor, that's getting the locker room right, that's doing laundry, that's maybe arranging travel accommodations, that's cutting up film. And films change a lot, over the last several years as well. So it's a lot easier to today's time. But take care of those little things, and those are things that allow you to serve the program in a bigger way. And so that sometimes I see younger coaches not taking enough initiative in those things.
That's right. And what we're saying about making the head coach look good, that's a byproduct of doing a job, a job well done as an assistant. Is the head coach is going to look good. And we talk about too, making the head coach's job easier, whatever that is. So it's really anticipatory for what does the program need and how I can meet those. And so a lot of those jobs, what you're saying, Sam, are thankless. Getting the gym floor swept ahead of time, setting up the equipment, organizing the meals, volunteering to do things, just knowing that players need them, coach needs them, admin need them. And for us who are in a thankless role at times, we can get, a little frustrated when we're not being thanked. Or we're not being recognized, or we don't know if we're bringing the values, people really see us. And so one thing to combat that, we talk about gratitude, but is to show other people the value they bring, to recognize them for the thankless work that they're doing. And in that, you're modeling what you need a little bit more of. And so you don't, raise your hand and say, why isn't anybody thanking me? But you just live in such a way, and you model in such a way, you coach in such a way that you're modeling the behaviors that you'd like to see. And hopefully you're part of a culture and a team where that's going to rub off on people, and you're going to be an influencer and you're a leader in your role. And that's how, again, just talk about all the little things you were naming as assistant coach we're going to do. I know that a lot of coaches struggle with, well, it's not being recognized or valued. And so you have to turn it into an action for yourself, an opportunity for you to model it. If it's not being lived out in your program, then that's a sign that you need to step up.
Lisa, you and I get to talk to coaches every day, and it's one of the great things I love about what I do. But we get to talk to them and listen. These are head coaches, assistant coaches at all levels. These are private conversations. Some of them are right here on the Hardwood Hustle and our PGC coaching community. As you think back about your time as an assistant in college, as you think about the conversations you've had, what would you say that head coaches could do a better job of, or just do a good job of, if they really wanted their assistant coaches to thrive and star in their role and feel like they have ownership of the program? I think that's a big word that I think a lot of assistants and head coaches would want. Like, because when I was an assistant, I'm in the middle of my question. I'm going to go on a quick side note here. When I was an assistant, Lisa, I literally would go to the office every day and wake up every day like I was the head coach, meaning I want to take ownership of every facet of the program, as if not in an ego way, like really not, but more of like, okay, is this how the head coach would want it done? Is this, am I owning, if different parts of it? And I think it allows you to thrive and do better. But my question to you is, what do you think head coaches could do a really good job of if they did this, allowing their assistants to star and thrive in their role?
So a couple of thoughts that came to me just thinking about my role. And there was one thing I know early on, because I started off as like the director of ops at St. Mary's, then moved into assistant coaching. And so with that, there was a couple of things that I took on that nobody in the program had really done to the level that I had done it. So equipment was one, getting male practice players regularly to practice and organizing that was one. And so then as a coach, I started doing more of the shooting, some more offensive stuff, some calendar organization things. But I was growing into that and one thing my head coach, Coach Thomas, did a great job of was just giving me autonomy in that and letting me, do what I need to do. And I learned a lot by doing. I learned a lot through failure. And so for head coaches, I would say, one, play the long game. Know that there's going to be some bumps along the road. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to get more right in the long term by mentoring them, by letting them learn from their mistakes, by letting them, think as coaches early on, we think we have to control things because we don't want the drill to go bad. So I can't give it to, the coach, assistant coach one over there because I'm afraid they're going to mess it up. That's okay. I think that also shows your players that, you're modeling something for empowering them, just like you want to empower your players. And that creates a safe place to fail for your coaches. And so that's one. Play the long game and mentor them. Let them do it. Let them fail. Talk about it. How did that feel? What could you have done better? Here's a couple of tips. Ask them some questions. And so giving them that autonomy to own something. If you want them to own it, it has to be theirs. And so there has to be just some trust that's built through that process. And with that, when you say, well, I want it to be good, I want it to be great, I want it to meet the standard, because the head coach, we're just afraid, well, my standard isn't their standard. You need to model the standard every single day. So when you do a drill, do it as excellent as you can, and then ask for feedback. Try to constantly improve it. When you model that, your assistant coaches will also model that. They're going to want their drill to be great, their communication to be great, how they show up, their presence, their energy for practice. If you want them to bring energy, you bring the energy, and they will follow your lead. So it's about that, playing the long game, having the feedback, the conversations, opportunity to fail. It'll give them the ownership. But if you want it to be great, then you got to model the standard so they have something, cast a vision for them to reach.
Yeah, Lisa, so many good things again right there. And, I was jotting down some notes as you were talking, and I was just thinking, the skill set you develop as an assistant coach is pretty vast and expansive, man. You develop this ability to be organized. You got to be organized and your leadership, relationships, even your sales. I'm thinking about how these skills translate into other jobs. If you were to go do another job, motivating people, encouraging people. And I think what it comes back to is very similar to what we've talked about with players, which is what? It comes down to relationships. It comes down to communication. Communication is key. There will be gaps. There will be challenges in the communication. That's a given. Unless there's just like, even if there's crazy good chemistry and personalities mesh really well, like when you're going for something great and trying to like chase a championship or be a championship program, like there's just going to be times when things don't go great across the board. And so those courageous conversations. And then we talk about this with players, which is roles. Roles matter a lot on a coaching staff. Does everybody know what their role is and how they can thrive? And every staff is different. It's going to depend on the head coach's leadership. Some staffs, Lisa, they all do a little bit of everything. Some staffs, it's very singular focus like we talked about earlier. Hey, John, you're in charge of video. Hey, Chris, you're going to be in charge of all scouting. Hey, Julie, you've got all player development workouts. Some coaches do that, and it works really well. That's not what this conversation is about, is to tell you what you should do. It's simply to offer some ideas, get you thinking about what do I need to be good at? What do I need to step into? And so, again, communication and roles, Lisa, are key here. What's the final thought you have for coaches that are listening?
I have a final 1.5 thoughts. Here they are. One, I'm going to double down on great teams have great assistant coaches. So if you're sitting there and whether you're the head coach and you think, I can get through it with some, assistant coaches not living up to their role, like I don't think a team can achieve as much as, reach their potential and achieve like they want to. And then the second part is assistant coach. If you think your team's not going in the direction that you want, you can still play a great role. And so, maybe you're not going to have the winning season, or maybe you're, not a part of the most successful team or program. Again, I think the mission or the goal is beyond the X's and O's, beyond the wins and losses. And so assistant coach, you can step into your role to become as great as you can be, so that whatever role that happens next, you're prepared and ready, prepare for, being part of that winning season. And so step into that now. And with that, I know there could be assistant coaches who are unhappy where they're at, or they think that the values of the team aren't, the right ones, or the head coach isn't living up to the standard, or anything like that. Nobody's perfect, and no team and program is always perfect, but what do you do as an assistant coach? And I think it's naming your values, naming the behaviors you're going to live out, naming who you want to be, and trying to live up to that as best as you can every day. And so you can become the model, like we talked about earlier, is yes, we'd love for our head coach to model everything perfectly. Every human you put on a pedestal will fall off, I promise. So it's not that you're trying to get on the pedestal, but that you can be the model. You can set the standard. You can strive for excellence in your role as an assistant coach. But I think you have to cast that vision for yourself if it's not being cast for you or your program.
And coaches, as coaching can be a very rewarding profession. I don't even want to say profession. It can be a very rewarding calling. It can also be a very challenging calling. There can be highs of winning big games and championships and great seasons, and the lowest of lows of losing and not reaching a player, and everything in between. And that's part of it. And it's just enjoy all of it. Enjoy the day-to-day process. And you do that through the relationships, and have fun with it. That's another thing. Have fun going to the gym every day. Have fun sitting in those coaches' meetings, and embrace it all. We hope you learned something from today. We'd love to hear from you on social media. So hit us up at Hardwood Hustle or Lisa, or tag myself or TJ, and let's keep the conversation going. So thank you. That is Lisa. I am Sam, and we are the Hardwood Hustle.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hardwood Hustle, where we believe in the value of a coach. We want to bring you quality content and journey with you. Stay connected with us on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us at Hardwood_hustle. From the Hardwood Hustle team, thanks again. We can't wait to be with you again next week.